The Groton possession, Elizabeth Knapp's 1671 demonic ordeal, a servant girl convulses in a minister's home, speaks in a voice not her own, and names witches in Puritan Massachusetts. October in the year 1671 arrives cold and unforgiving in the Puritan settlement of Groton, Massachusetts Bay Colony. The community consists of devout families bound by strict religious conviction and the shared labor of survival on the edge of wilderness. In the household of Reverend Samuel Willard, the local minister, a 16-year-old servant girl named Elizabeth Knapp begins her daily tasks with no indication that she stands at the threshold of an ordeal that will be documented, discussed, and debated for centuries to come. Willard himself is a man of education and intelligence, trained in theology at Harvard College, committed to the rational examination of spiritual matters, even as he maintains unwavering belief in the reality of supernatural forces. What unfolds under his own roof will test both his faith and his capacity for careful observation. The first manifestation comes without warning. Elizabeth collapses to the floor, her body seized by violent convulsions that throw her limbs in directions that appear to exceed normal human flexibility. She shrieks with a volume and intensity that brings the household running. The sounds she produces do not resemble any cry of pain or distress that Willard has heard in his years of pastoral service, attending the sick and dying. They are guttural, animalistic, and seem to originate from somewhere deeper than her chest. When the episode passes and Elizabeth returns to consciousness, she remembers nothing. She weeps and trembles, apologizing for disruption she cannot explain. The episodes repeat. They come at different hours, without pattern or warning. Elizabeth is thrown from her bed at night, discovered on the floor in positions that suggest she has been dragged by unseen hands. During the day, while attempting her work, she suddenly freezes and then contorts, her spine arching backward, her face twisting into expressions that those present describe as inhuman. Willard observes everything with the attention of a scholar documenting evidence. He notes the timing, the duration, the physical manifestations, and the words Elizabeth speaks when she speaks at all. The voice that emerges during the episodes disturbs Willard more than the physical symptoms. It is not Elizabeth's voice. It is harsh, masculine, commanding. It identifies itself as the devil and claims to have authority over Elizabeth's soul. It mocks the prayers spoken over her and boasts of its power. When Willard demands answers in the name of God, the voice responds with blasphemies that Willard records in his letters only in abbreviated Latin, unwilling to write the full obscenities in English. Between these outbursts, Elizabeth returns to herself, horrified by what she is told she has said, begging Willard to continue praying for her deliverance. Then Elizabeth begins naming names. During her episodes, she identifies specific neighbors as witches who have afflicted her through supernatural means. She describes seeing them in spectral form, tormenting her, sending demonic forces to possess her body. The accusations create immediate danger. In Puritan Massachusetts, witchcraft accusations are taken with deadly seriousness. Those named face interrogation, suspicion, and potential trial. The community fractures along lines of belief and fear. Some accept Elizabeth's accusations as divine revelation exposing hidden evil. Others question whether the voice speaking through Elizabeth can be trusted to tell truth. Willard navigates this crisis with remarkable care. He records the accusations in his private documentation, but he also records what happens when Elizabeth returns to lucidity. She recants. She weeps and insists she does not believe her neighbors are witches, that she has no memory of making the accusations, that the words came from something speaking through her, but not from her own conviction. Willard notes this pattern explicitly in his letters. He writes that he does not consider the accusations made during Elizabeth's episodes to be reliable evidence. His documentation of these recantations protects the named neighbors from prosecution. His caution reflects both pastoral compassion and intellectual rigor. Other ministers arrive to assist. They gather in Willard's home to pray over Elizabeth, to read scripture aloud, to command whatever force afflicts her to depart in the name of Christ. Physicians examine her and find no natural disease or condition that explains her symptoms. They measure her pulse during episodes and find it racing beyond normal limits. They observe her strength during convulsions and note that it requires multiple adults to restrain her, though she is a slender girl who weighs perhaps 100 pounds. They check for signs of fraud or performance and find none. The medical men depart with no diagnosis to offer beyond confirmation that what they have witnessed exceeds their understanding of natural illness. The episodes continue for weeks. Elizabeth endures violent physical convulsions that leave her exhausted and bruised. She speaks in languages that witnesses insist she has never studied. She demonstrates knowledge of events occurring elsewhere in the settlement that she should have no means of knowing. The voice that speaks through her describes theological concepts and argues points of doctrine with the assembled ministers in ways that seem beyond the education of an uneducated servant girl. Willard documents all of this with methodical precision, aware that he is creating a record that will be examined by other scholars and clergy. The community watches and prays. Some families keep their children away from Willard's household, fearing contagion of either natural or supernatural origin. Others bring food and offer assistance, understanding that the minister and his family are enduring an ordeal that tests the limits of their faith and endurance. Elizabeth herself oscillates between states of affliction and periods of tearful coherence in which she expresses horror at what is happening to her and desperate hope that prayer will bring deliverance. Gradually, the episodes begin to diminish in frequency and intensity. After weeks of sustained prayer, pastoral care, and the presence of clergy maintaining constant spiritual warfare through scripture and invocation, Elizabeth experiences longer periods free from affliction. The violent convulsions become less frequent. The inhuman voice speaks less often and with less force. Eventually, the episodes cease entirely. Elizabeth recovers. She remains in Willard's household, continuing her service. In the years that follow, she marries, bears children, and lives a long life in the Massachusetts colony. The community that witnessed her affliction remembers, but Elizabeth herself returns to ordinary existence. Reverend Willard's documentation of the case circulates through the colonies and reaches England. His letters are copied, shared among clergy, and discussed in theological circles. The case becomes part of the growing literature of demonic possession in New England, joining other documented accounts from the early colonial period. Willard's careful observation, his skepticism of spectral accusations, and his focus on pastoral care rather than punishment distinguish his handling of the case from less measured responses to similar phenomena. 21 years later, in 1692, Salem erupts in witch trial hysteria that results in executions and destroys lives and families. Reverend Samuel Willard, by then serving as pastor of Old South Church in Boston, takes a position that draws directly from his experience with Elizabeth Knapp. He argues against the reliability of spectral evidence, questioning whether visions and accusations made during alleged possession should be accepted as proof of witchcraft. His advocacy helps to eventually halt the Salem prosecutions. His voice carries weight because he speaks from direct experience, having witnessed and documented possession firsthand while maintaining critical judgment about what the possessed person's accusations actually prove. The Elizabeth Knapp case stands in the historical record as one of the most thoroughly documented possession accounts from colonial America. Unlike many later cases that come to us through rumor, hearsay, or sensationalized second-hand reports, the Groton possession is preserved in the detailed letters of an educated observer who had every motive to maintain objectivity and every opportunity to observe closely. Willard was not a distant investigator arriving after the fact. He was present throughout, living in the same household, witnessing the episodes as they occurred, and documenting them with the precision of a scholar creating evidence for examination. Modern historians study the case from multiple perspectives. Some interpret Elizabeth's symptoms as manifestations of psychological trauma or illness, understood through the theological framework available in 17th century New England. Others note the physical phenomena that witnesses described, the strength and contortions that seem to exceed natural capacity, and acknowledge that the case resists simple explanation. Paranormal researchers examine the documentation and find patterns consistent with possession cases from other cultures and time periods, suggesting that whatever occurred in Groton in 1671 follows templates that appear across centuries and continents. The case endures because the documentation endures. Willard's letters survive in archives, available for examination. The facts he recorded, the careful distinctions he made between what Elizabeth said during episodes and what she affirmed during lucidity, and his refusal to accept supernatural accusations as proof of human guilt, all contribute to a portrait of an event that defies easy categorization. Something happened to Elizabeth Knapp in the autumn of 1671. Multiple witnesses observed phenomena they could not explain through natural causes. An educated minister documented what he saw with attention to detail and intellectual honesty. The record remains, raising questions that 3.5 centuries have not resolved. If you found this case compelling, subscribe to Vanishing Roads for more documented paranormal investigations from around the world. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.